Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. This time we're going to be diving deep into space exploration, which I think you'll all agree is a pretty fascinating topic, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who doesn't love thinking about space?
Right. So for this deep dive, we've got a ton of sources, historical accounts, mission plans, the latest in cutting-edge tech, even some crazy ideas about like going beyond our solar system. Our mission, if you will, is to give you a really clear picture of where we are right now in space exploration, what's on the horizon, and maybe most importantly, why should any of this matter to you?
It really is a fascinating time to be looking into space. Things are moving so quickly now with all the new tech and new
Hmm.
players.
It really is. Okay, so to kick things off, why don't we rewind the clock a bit? Go back and look at some of the key moments that kind of kicked off this whole space craze. I'm talking about Sputnik, Gagarin's orbit, the Apollo 11 moon landing. These are the events that are like burned into our collective memories. And it's really amazing to think how those early achievements from decades ago really set the stage for everything that's come after.
What I find so interesting about those early space race achievements is they not only pushed the technology forward, but they brought people together, gave everyone a common purpose. They made things like the International Space Station possible because people were suddenly willing to work together. And I don't know, they inspired so many people to go into science and engineering and math. I mean, I know they did for me.
Yeah, you and me both. And you're right, that drive to explore is as strong as ever.
Hmm.
I mean, look at the buzz around going back to the moon.
Yeah.
NASA's got this whole Artemis program, and their goal is to put astronauts back on the moon by 2025. But this time it feels different, doesn't it? It's not just about planting a flag and grabbing some rocks anymore.
It's totally different. Artemis is a complete shift in thinking. It's about being on the moon for good, building a whole base camp there, and using the moon as a starting point for even bigger missions, like, Mars.
So it's like the moon is the new hotspot again. And speaking of Mars, I mean, there's so much happening there right now, even without humans. NASA's got that Perseverance rover, which is not only sending back these incredible pictures, but it's actually searching for signs of ancient life. I mean, how wild is that? We're actually looking for aliens. Well, maybe.
Haha, yeah, well, maybe. It's crazy to think about, for sure. And perseverance is not just about looking back in time for life. It's also doing all this work to pave the way for humans, testing out ways to make oxygen right there on Mars, gathering data on the geology and the climate, even flying that little helicopter, Ingenuity, to show that we can fly on another planet.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the helicopter. It's like we're at the very beginning of this whole new era of human exploration. And then you've got SpaceX with Elon Musk talking about building a whole city on Mars.
Mm.
It's a self-sustaining city by the middle of the century. I mean, is that even possible? I know he's got big ideas, but is that realistic?
I'll be honest, there are some massive hurdles to overcome. We're talking about creating a place where people can live, breathe, have water to drink, grow food. It's a huge challenge. But, and this is a big but, space technology is moving so fast.
Yeah.
And the vision that Musk and SpaceX have is actually driving a lot of research. You never know what kind of breakthroughs might come out of it.
Yeah, it is both scary and exciting to think about what it would take to actually live on another planet. But even if Mars is still a few decades away, there's one part of space travel that's getting more and more accessible right now. I'm talking about space tourism. Companies like Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic are already sending regular people into space just for the experience.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just short trips, but they get to feel weightlessness and see the Earth from space.
It's amazing how quickly space tourism has become, well, a thing. And what's really interesting about it is it's not just for billionaires anymore. I mean, it's still expensive, but it's driving down the cost for everyone. And you know what? It's making people think about space in a whole new way.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got lunar bases, Mars missions, and space tourism all happening at the same time. But what's really making all this possible is the technology, right? Like reusable rockets like SpaceX's Falcon 9 and their Starship. That's been a game changer because it's so much cheaper to launch stuff into space now.
Oh, reusable rockets are absolutely huge. But there's so much more happening on the tech side. New propulsion systems like ion thrusters that are really efficient for long missions. And then there's the potential for nuclear propulsion, which could get us to, like, way out there, much faster.
Yeah, that's like next level stuff. And we're even talking about asteroid mining, extracting resources from asteroids, water for fuel, rare elements that we can use back here on Earth. That just blows my mind.
Yeah, asteroid mining is definitely not science fiction anymore. Companies are really investing in it, and I think we're going to see big developments there.
It's like a 21st century gold rush, but in space. And we're not just talking about our own solar system anymore either. There are serious discussions about interstellar travel, like the Breakthrough Starshot project, which aims to send little probes to Alpha Centauri, which is another star system.
Starshot is so ambitious. I mean, reaching another star system in like a human lifetime, it's mind-blowing, but also incredibly difficult. Think about it. Propulsion systems that can get us close to the speed of light, designing spacecraft that can survive interstellar space, figuring out how to send data back from that far away. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And then you've got these ideas about generation ships, which are these giant spaceships that could travel for like generations. To reach new star systems, you'd need multiple generations of people living and dying on the ship.
Generation ships are fascinating, but also a bit scary when you think about it. How do you make sure humanity survives on a ship for that long? And what about the ethics of sending people on a one-way trip? It really makes you think.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Early space exploration, the latest missions, even some crazy future tech. But before we get too carried away, I think we need to ask a pretty basic question. Why? Why explore space at all? Is it just because we're curious, or is there something more to it?
That is a great question, and a big one. And you know what? That's exactly what we're going to tackle when we come back.
So stick around, folks. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We were just getting into the big why question before the break. Why do we even bother with space exploration?
Yeah, it's easy to get excited about new discoveries and cool tech, but it's important to step back sometimes and ask those big questions.
Right, because at the end of the day, space exploration is a human endeavor, driven by our curiosity, by our ambition, and let's face it, a desire to understand where we fit into this whole vast universe.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But venturing further into space, well, it comes with some pretty big challenges, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like radiation. That's got to be a huge concern for any long-duration missions, and especially if we're talking about people living on Mars or the Moon.
Radiation's a big one, for sure. I mean, here on Earth, we're pretty lucky. We've got the atmosphere and the magnetic field that protect us from most of the really harmful radiation that's out there.
Yeah.
But once you leave Earth, well, astronauts are exposed to much higher levels of cosmic rays and solar radiation, and that's not good for your health.
Not good at all. I mean, doesn't radiation damage your DNA and increase the risk of cancer?
It does, and it can also affect cognitive function, like your thinking and memory. And obviously, the longer you're out there, the more you're exposed. So if we're serious about sending people beyond Earth's protection, we need to figure out how to protect them from radiation.
Okay, so what are some of the ideas they're working on? We can't exactly wrap spaceships in lead, can we?
No, a giant lead shield's not very practical. But they're working on some really innovative solutions. One area that's promising is developing new materials that are much better at absorbing or deflecting radiation. Some scientists are even looking into using water as a shield because it's surprisingly good at absorbing radiation. And we know there's water out there in space, which is a bonus.
Makes sense. Use what you got, right? What about the design of the habitats themselves? Can we design them in a way that helps protect against radiation?
Definitely. The design plays a big part. Thick walls, incorporating shielding materials into the structure, and even just orienting living spaces in a way that minimizes exposure. And for places like Mars or the Moon, there's been a lot of talk about building habitats underground, using lava tubes or caves that already exist.
So like living in caves on other planets. Sounds pretty sci-fi.
It does, doesn't it? But it makes a lot of sense. Underground habitats would not only protect from radiation, but also help with temperature control. And they'd provide some protection from micrometeoroids, which are another hazard you have to worry about in space.
So many things to think about. Okay, radiation is one thing, but we also need to think about the absolute basics, right? Air to breathe, water to drink, and food to eat. Those are kind of essential if we want to live on another planet.
You're telling me. And honestly, those are some of the biggest challenges facing space exploration right now. We need to completely rethink how we manage resources. Like, take air, for example. One idea is to use plants to generate oxygen through photosynthesis. I mean, plants do it all the time here on Earth, so why not on Mars? Or in a lunar habitat.
Right, like a little self-contained ecosystem, a little Earth bubble on another planet.
Exactly. And then there's water. It would be insanely expensive to transport enough water from Earth to sustain a colony on Mars, for example. So we need to find ways to get it locally. On Mars, we think there's water ice beneath the surface that we could potentially extract and purify. And on the Moon, there might be water ice trapped in craters that are always in shadow.
So we're talking about becoming space miners. But for water, what about food? How are we going to feed a whole bunch of people on another planet?
That's where hydroponics comes in. Basically, it's growing plants in water without soil. It's already used a lot here on Earth, and it could be perfect for space habitats where resources are limited.
So we're talking about creating these closed-loop systems
Yeah.
where everything is recycled and reused as much as possible, kind of like a mini version of what happens naturally here on Earth.
Exactly. Except we're not just copying Earth, we're actually trying to improve on it. Space exploration is pushing us to become way more efficient and sustainable with our resources. And honestly, the things we learn from trying to create self-sustaining environments in space could actually help us live more sustainably here on Earth, too.
It's amazing how space exploration can inspire solutions that benefit everyone, not just astronauts. But let's not forget about the human factor. I mean, I can't imagine being stuck in a tiny space millions of miles from home for months or even years. What about the psychological impact of that?
That's a great point, and one that's getting more attention these days. The psychological well-being of astronauts is absolutely critical. The isolation, the confinement, the lack of natural light and open spaces, it can all take a toll. It can lead to stress, anxiety, even depression.
So how do we address that? What are they doing to support the mental health of astronauts on these long missions?
Well, we're starting to realize that psychological support needs to be baked into everything, from the design of the habitats to the planning of the mission. Things like incorporating elements of nature into the habitat, providing virtual reality experiences that can simulate natural environments, even just making sure they can communicate regularly with family and friends back home. All of that's really important.
It's a good reminder that technology isn't everything. We need to take care of the people who are going out there exploring for all of us.
Couldn't agree more. And it highlights another crucial aspect of space exploration: collaboration. I mean, to solve these huge challenges, from radiation shielding to creating a sustainable life support system, we need everyone to work together.
It takes a village to get to Mars.
Uh-huh,
Maybe.
exactly. And it's not just about scientists and engineers either. We need psychologists, medical professionals, nutritionists, all sorts of expertise.
It's a global effort, really.
And it's happening. Look at the International Space Station. Look
Yeah.
at the Artemis program. These are examples of different countries, different space agencies, all working together.
It shows that space exploration isn't just about competition. It's about pushing the boundaries of what humanity can achieve. And we do it better when we work together.
Absolutely. And as we venture further out, that collaborative spirit is only going to become more important. We need to share our resources, our knowledge, and our expertise to overcome the challenges ahead.
That's a good note to end on, I think.
Hmm.
So with all this in mind, where do we go from here?
Well, that's a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive. We're going to zoom in on some of the most exciting space missions that are in development right now, from Artemis and SpaceX's Mars plans to the whole world of space tourism. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. We've covered so much ground already, talking about the past, present, and future of space exploration. But before we wrap things up, let's look at some of the specific missions that are happening right now. Stuff that's shaping the future of space travel. And I think a good place to start is NASA's Artemis program.
Yeah, Artemis is a big deal. It's not just one mission. It's really a whole plan for like a long-term human presence on the moon. They want to build a permanent infrastructure on the moon, a base camp, and this thing called the Lunar Gateway. It's going to be a space station, but it orbits the moon.
So it's like a hub for all things lunar, a place to launch missions from, and maybe even a stepping stone to deeper space.
Exactly. The gateway is going to be essential for science, for testing out new technologies, and ultimately for preparing us for the challenge of getting to Mars and beyond.
And this isn't just a NASA thing, right? I mean, other countries are involved too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Artemis is a great example of how countries can work together in space. You've got agencies from all over the world: Europe, Canada, Japan. They're all contributing to Artemis, sharing their resources and their knowledge to make it happen.
It's a global project, which is really cool.
Hmm.
Speaking of ambitious projects, we have to talk about SpaceX and their plans for colonizing Mars. I mean, Elon Musk is serious about building a city on Mars, and his Starship is a key part of that.
Starship is going to be a game changer if they can pull it off. It's designed to be fully reusable, which means it can fly to Mars, land, and then come back to Earth. And it can carry a lot of people and cargo, which is essential if you're talking about building a whole city on another planet.
It's mind-blowing to think about.
Ah.
But as we've been talking about, there are so many challenges to overcome. The radiation, the life support, the psychological effects of being away from Earth for so long. Are scientists and engineers really confident they can solve these problems? And in a time frame, that makes Mars colonization even realistic.
Well, the challenges are huge, no question about it. But the pace of technology is increasing all the time, and you see some really brilliant people working on these problems all over the world. There's no guarantee of success, but the progress they're making in areas like radiation shielding, closed-loop life support, and even 3D printing habitats, it's really encouraging.
Yeah, it feels like we're on the verge of something big. While we wait for those Mars cities to become a reality, though, there's one part of space travel that's already booming: space tourism. We talked earlier about those short suborbital flights, but it feels like that's just the beginning.
Oh, definitely. What we're seeing now is just the tip of the iceberg, I think. As space travel gets cheaper, there are going to be so many more options for space tourists. Orbital hotels, trips to the moon, even space-based entertainment and adventures. Who knows what we'll see?
It's wild to think about. And this whole idea of democratizing space travel, making it accessible to more people, it's going to have a ripple effect on the whole industry, won't it?
I think so, yeah. More people going into space means more investment, more demand for new technologies. It could really accelerate the development of new propulsion systems, materials, and even things like artificial intelligence for autonomous spacecraft. And maybe, just maybe, it'll make it easier and cheaper to do more science in space.
Right. So space tourism isn't just about rich people having fun. It's actually pushing the whole field forward.
It's a win-win, really. And who knows, maybe as more people experience space for themselves, there'll be even more public support for space exploration overall.
I hope so. Well, as we come to the end of this deep dive, I just feel this sense of awe. It's incredible what humans are capable of. From those first baby steps into space to the idea of living on the moon or Mars or even traveling to other stars, it's clear that our desire to explore, to push the boundaries, it's a fundamental part of who we are.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Space exploration is about so much more than just science and technology. It's about pushing the limits of human ingenuity. It's about working together as a global community. And it's about inspiring the next generation to dream big and reach for the stars.
I think you've given our listeners a lot to think about. They have a much better understanding of space exploration, the challenges, and the amazing potential that's out there. And most importantly, we've highlighted that incredible human drive to explore.
As you continue to follow the journey of space exploration, keep asking questions, keep challenging assumptions, and never lose that sense of wonder about the universe.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of space exploration, everyone. Until next time, keep looking up.